Ambassador Kael had studied humanity for 11 years. He'd read every available document, every historical record, every diplomatic briefing. He arrived on Earth absolutely certain of one thing. Humans were barbarians. Brilliant, dangerous, unpredictable barbarians, but barbarians nonetheless. A species that had spent most of its history killing each other over invisible lines on a map, that had built weapons capable of destroying their own planet and then pointed them at each other for generations. Uncivilized, emotional, irrational. He had prepared extensively for the worst. He was not prepared for what actually happened. Nobody ever is.
The Galactic Diplomatic Corps had a standard preparation protocol for first contact assignments. 6 months of cultural immersion, language acquisition, behavioral analysis, threat assessment, psychological profiling of the target species, detailed contingency planning for 47 categories of diplomatic incident. Ambassador Kael had completed all of it. Twice. He had requested the Earth assignment after 3 colleagues had declined it. Not because he was brave, because he was methodical. He believed that any species, no matter how unpredictable, could be understood through sufficient data analysis. He had sufficient data. Humans had been at war somewhere on their planet for approximately 93% of their recorded history. They had developed nuclear weapons before they developed reliable global communication. They had 23 active armed conflicts at the time of his briefing. Their most popular entertainment involved watching simulated versions of themselves hurt each other. His psychological profile conclusion was unambiguous. Humanity is a juvenile species, in the aggressive expansion phase. High threat potential, low diplomatic reliability. Recommend minimal engagement protocol. His supervising director had approved the assessment. Added one note. Be careful, Kael. The data is accurate. It is also incomplete. Kael had noted this, filed it, moved on. He was a data analyst by training. He trusted data. He landed on Earth on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he had revised his entire assessment. Not because the data was wrong, because it had measured everything, except the thing that mattered most.
The landing was scheduled for a secure diplomatic facility. What nobody had told Kael, or perhaps what he had not adequately processed, was that the facility was located in a city of 11 million people. The motorcade from the landing zone to the diplomatic center took 40 minutes through streets that were, there was no other word for it, alive. Humans everywhere. Moving, talking, selling things, carrying children, arguing, laughing, consulting small handheld devices, eating food purchased from temporary structures on the street. Kael pressed his face closer to the armored window. His briefing had prepared him for aggression. It had not prepared him for this volume of simultaneous activity. They are always like this? He asked his human liaison. Like what? She said. This present. All of them. All at once. She looked out the window, shrugged. It's Tuesday. Kael processed this. At an intersection, the motorcade paused. A human, older, carrying groceries, caught Kael's eye through the window. Kael had been told not to make eye contact with civilians. The human smiled. Not aggressively, not politically, just warmly. The uncomplicated smile of someone acknowledging another person's existence. Then the light changed, and he walked on. Kael sat back. His threat assessment had included 47 categories of diplomatic incident. It had not included that smile. He made a note. Day 1, hour 1. Category unlisted. Civilian made non-strategic eye contact and smiled. No apparent motive. Investigate. His liaison glanced at his notes. Looked out the window. You're going to need a bigger notebook, she said.
The diplomatic welcome dinner was Kael's first formal test. He had prepared extensively. Table customs, dietary protocols, conversational boundaries, appropriate topics, inappropriate topics, a ranked list of subjects to avoid in order of diplomatic sensitivity. Number 1 on the avoid list, historical human conflicts. Number 2, religion. Number 3, politics. He arrived at the dinner with his avoid list memorized. Within 4 minutes, a human diplomat had raised all 3 simultaneously. Not aggressively, conversationally. The way humans apparently discussed their most sensitive subjects. Openly, at a dinner table, with people they had met 11 minutes ago. Kael gripped his diplomatic training mentally and held on. Across the table, a human senator was explaining, with genuine enthusiasm, exactly why his government's foreign policy had been catastrophically wrong for 30 years. He seemed to find this funny. The human next to him disagreed loudly. They argued for 7 minutes, with increasing volume, and then ordered dessert together. Kael watched this with profound confusion. His cultural briefing had classified human political disagreement as a high-tension scenario, requiring careful de-escalation. These two were now sharing a dessert menu. His liaison leaned over. "You look alarmed." "They were arguing," Kael said quietly. "They always argue. They've been friends for 20 years. Kael looked at the two humans, now laughing about something, the argument apparently completely resolved or forgotten, or simply not as significant as it had appeared. "On my homeworld," he said carefully, "disagreement of that intensity would end a diplomatic relationship." His liaison considered this. "Here," she said, "it usually means they respect each other enough to be honest." Kael looked at her, added a second note to his growing list. Human conflict is not always what it appears. Requires complete reclassification. Day 4 was not in the official diplomatic schedule. Kael's junior aide had fallen ill, a minor reaction to local atmosphere, nothing serious, but requiring medical attention. The diplomatic medical facility was unavailable. His liaison had driven them to a public hospital. Kael had expected, based on his research into human resource allocation and economic disparity, a difficult experience. What he found was complicated. The waiting room was crowded, loud, inefficient by any measurable standard. Humans waited for hours. Some were visibly frustrated. The system was underfunded, understaffed, and struggling under obvious pressure. And yet, a nurse, at the end of what Kael's liaison said was a 14-hour shift, stopped to sit with an elderly human who was alone and frightened. Not because it was her job at that moment, because the person was alone and frightened. A stranger in the waiting room, young, clearly there for his own injury, arm in a makeshift support, spent 40 minutes entertaining a small human child whose parent was being treated. He made the child laugh. When his name was called, he gave the child his place in the waiting room entertainment queue, a tablet loaded with simple games, and walked away without being thanked. Nobody noticed these things except Kael, because to the humans around him, they were apparently not remarkable. He sat in that waiting room for 3 hours. By the end, he had stopped taking notes. He was just watching. A species that had been at war for 93% of its history, sitting together in an underfunded waiting room, quietly, unremarkably, taking care of each other. His original assessment felt very far away.
On day 7, Kael requested an unscheduled meeting with his liaison. Not diplomatic, not formal. He asked her to walk with him. They walked for an hour through a public park, which was itself remarkable. A preserved natural space in the center of a city of 11 million, maintained specifically so people had somewhere to breathe. He asked her one question.
How do you do it? She looked at him. Do what? All of it, he gestured. At the park, the city, the sky. You are aware of everything that is wrong. I have read your literature, your journalism, your history. You document your failures comprehensively. You know exactly how much you have hurt each other. How many wars, how much damage. She said nothing. And yet, Kael said, you persist. The nurse at the end of a 14-hour shift. The young man with the injured arm. The two politicians who argue and share dessert. He paused. You know everything that is wrong, and you keep choosing. Every day. Small choices that your data doesn't capture and your history doesn't record. His liaison was quiet for a long time. I don't think we think about it that way, she said finally. How do you think about it? She watched a human child chase a bird across the grass. The bird escaped. The child laughed anyway. We just show up, she said. Every day. We know it's hard, and we show up anyway. She shrugged. What else would you do? Kael stood with that for a very long time. What else would you do? He thought about his original assessment. Juvenile species. Aggressive expansion phase. Low diplomatic reliability. He had measured wars. He had not measured the nurse. He had not measured the park. He had not measured the choice to show up.
Kael filed his preliminary diplomatic assessment on day 9. It was the longest document he had ever produced. Not because the data was complex, because the conclusion required justification that his superiors would not immediately accept. He had been sent to assess a threat. He was filing a recommendation instead. Humanity is the most misrepresented species in galactic diplomatic record, he wrote. Our existing assessments measure conflict accurately, and culture almost not at all. What our data captures, 93% of recorded history involves armed conflict. Accurate. What our data misses, humans have ended every war they have ever fought. They have rebuilt every city they have destroyed. They have treated enemies as allies within single generations. They have created art, medicine, infrastructure, and systems of mutual care in the spaces between conflicts. And these spaces are larger and more significant than the conflicts themselves. We classified them by their worst moments. We did not measure their response to those moments. He paused, thought about the waiting room, the park, the smile through the armored window on day 1. Humanity is not a barbarian species in the aggressive expansion phase. Humanity is a species that has faced the worst of itself, repeatedly, comprehensively, at great cost, and chosen every time to continue. I have studied 43 species across 30 years of diplomatic service. I have never encountered a species that fails as visibly or recovers as stubbornly. Revised classification recommendation. Humanity. Category 1 diplomatic priority. Full engagement protocol. Immediate. He sent the report. His director responded in 4 minutes. What happened to you down there, Kael? He looked out the window at the city. A nurse worked a 14-hour shift and still stopped, he wrote back. A stranger entertained a child he would never see again. 2 politicians argued and shared dessert. A pause. Nothing happened to me. I just started measuring the right things. The formal diplomatic relationship was established 6 weeks later. Kael was appointed permanent ambassador to Earth, a posting he had requested, which surprised everyone who had read his original assessment and surprised no one who had read his revised one. His final report to the Galactic Diplomatic Corps became required reading at the Academy. Not the data sections, the conclusion. A single paragraph that cadets across 12 species memorized not because they were required to,
but because it was true in a way that stayed with you. Before Earth, I believed civilization was the absence of conflict. I now understand it is something harder, the persistent choice to care for each other in the presence of it. Humans have never achieved the absence of conflict. They have, however, demonstrated the persistent choice to an extent unmatched in the galactic record. Assess them accordingly. On his last official day before the permanent posting began, Kael walked through the same park where his liaison had answered his question. Same city, same noise, same 11 million people living simultaneously at full volume. A human, different one, never seen before, caught his eye, smiled. No agenda, no strategy, just the uncomplicated acknowledgement of another person's existence. Kael smiled back, made no note. He didn't need to anymore. He already knew what it meant.